This is Emily Hull with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at the OSU Library. Today is Tuesday, July 31st, 2018, and I'm interviewing Clemonce Heard for the Deep Roots Oklahoma Authors Oral History Project. Clem, you're an award-winning poet, a 2018 Tulsa Artist Fellow, a recent MFA grad from OSU, and you're also from the well-seasoned city of New Orleans.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you.
So your full first name is Clemonce, Clemonce. Could you tell me a little bit about your name?
Correct. So it's my dad's name. Out of my grandfather's 6 sons, he was the only one who was given a name, a family name, pretty much. So it's running the family for 4 generations.
Oh.
And it was actually a clerical error, is what we found. We think we figured out because there was a Clemonce before Clemonce. And so we just kind of think that there was a screw up somewhere and it came to be. But yeah, I mean, that's the name in a nutshell. It means merciful. That's about all I know about it. You know, clemency.
Yeah.
So,
And were you born in New Orleans?
Yeah.
And raised there, grew up there?
Born and raised.
All right. How would you describe the city to someone who's never visited?
Well, you know, it's the city, but New Orleans is it's a country place.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Orleans is to me, it's a country place, and mainly because we didn't spend much time in the city, in like the French Quarters or anything. My dad doesn't like sweets, so we weren't down there getting beignets and stuff that much, right?
Yeah.
But we spent most of our time away from the city, maybe fishing or just doing things outside. And so, I think for people who just kind of come into New Orleans who are not familiar with the area, they say, "Oh, it's the city." But if you kind of just check in with yourself and take a look around, you'll see, it's not the city. This is kind of it's southern. It is southern, so it is the South, and or what they call, New France, kind of like Quebec, right? It's the New France, so it's separated from a lot of the other parts of the South because of the Aboriginal and European influence and everything. So
So you mentioned fishing. What else did you like to do for fun, or where did you like to hang out, or favorite restaurants, memorable meals?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, fishing was big. My dad's a fisherman, and his dad, I believe his dad fished. So he'll probably correct me. He probably will never see this. Well, if he does, he'll say, "Yeah, his grandfather fished."
We can put in notes.
Right.
It's okay, Dad.
Right. It's all right. It's okay. But fishing and football. My dad would actually come outside with me and my friends. He would play with us. Road bikes were just outside most of the time. I mean, skating rinks and bowling and just kind of regular stuff, like regular things, and then getting into trouble once in a while, which is good till you get caught. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more about your parents. Let's start with your dad. How would you describe his personality? What's he like?
He's funny.
Yeah?
He's funny. He's a funny. I think I was thinking. I was thinking about hugs earlier, which is, I know, random. But I was thinking about it because I was like, okay, well, I'll see Emily, so I'll give her a hug, right? But I was thinking of how I kind of protect myself, and sometimes I don't hug people because I'm like, I don't know if they're going to be like good huggers, right? Yeah. And thinking about him, he's awkward like that. He gives like the worst hugs I've ever had.
Really?
They're terrible. Yeah, he's a terrible hugger. And it's like a sort of awkwardness that he has. And I'm like, you grew up, you were sleeping in the bed with your brothers, you grew up with all of these guys, and you can't give me a hug? It's weird. But he's very practical, and he's a man of principles, and he's very smart, very smart. He didn't finish high school. He was getting into trouble back then, and wound up going to jail. And his mother always told them, my grandmother always told her 6 sons, if y'all ever find yourselves, locked up, y'all gonna stay there because I'm not coming to get you. And so he ended up not finishing school, but super smart. I mean, he's worked in grocery, really. I mean, he's worked as a produce manager for several years, though he doesn't, that's the weird part about it is he doesn't really eat fruit, right? And so
Really?
think about being surrounded by all of this, just so much vegetation, so much fruit, like all of this stuff. We have all of this stuff at hand that you can readily eat, and he's not eating any of it. And I was like, you should be the healthiest man in the world. But he's, kind of weird like that. He's a cook.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great cook, and I think it probably runs because his older brother, Uncle Jeffrey, he's a cook. He owns a restaurant in New Orleans, and so but real simple.
What's his signature thing? Like, what's he do better than everyone else? Maybe according to him.
His signature thing,
Yeah.
He uses butter better than everyone else.
Oh, really?
He uses a lot of butter. His barbecue shrimp are good,
Mm-hmm.
really good, and his steaks, he'll cook a great steak. His barbecue, I liked it better when I was younger. Now that I can barbecue myself, because he's a burner. He's one of the people who say his burn is perfect, and you're like biting into it, and your teeth are feeling the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so probably steaks, shrimp, or fried fish, fried trout or something. Yeah.
How about your mom? What's her name?
Her name's Alicia.
How do you spell that?
Elesia.
What's she like?
Very quiet,
Yeah.
very reserved,
Mm-hmm.
very sweet, but at the same time scary. Because that's the quiet people are, right?
Uh-huh.
Because you don't really know what's going to happen. So my dad was really the fusser. He was the the grumpy, sometimes angry, and coming storming through the house. But for some reason, and though I was very afraid of my dad when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
but for some reason my mom was the one who really kind of intimidated because I didn't know what she was thinking, and so if we did something wrong, it was like, and she was quiet, we didn't know what was going to happen. I was like, what's she going to do? She's very quiet, and she's sweet. I don't want to paint a picture that she's mean or anything. She's not. She's a very sweet woman. Doesn't say much, and can just be. She's the type of person who my dad needs to be constantly stimulated. He always has to be doing something and talking, and if it gets boring, he's leaving. He's not, even with fishing, right? So fishing is something that's patient, like a patient type of thing. And we'll go fishing, and if we're out there for like 35 minutes and we haven't gotten a bite in it, he's like, gotta go, which is weird, right? It's
that's kind of hard to fish.
like how do you? And I'm out there like, man, we just got out here,
Yeah.
But that's him. But my mom's, she can just kind of sit somewhere, and she doesn't even have to talk. She'll just enjoy just being there. But pretty simple, and she just wants peace. Really, she's like, I just want some peace, some good food, and she's good. She doesn't require much.
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
One, an older sister.
Older sister.
Yeah. Older sister.
You guys get along growing up with the...
Yeah. She's 3 years older than I am, and she was always the rough one, really. She was the one who was a little more rough around the edges, and the brave one, and the very outspoken one. So to the point where I didn't speak until I was 4 years old, because she would talk for me, right? And so it wasn't until my mom was like, I think, she brought me in. She's like, I think my child, maybe he's deaf or something. I don't know what's going on. He's not talking. And, they say, leave the room, and they got me together. And then, mom came back and was like, well, does he have an older sibling? And mom was like, yeah. And the doctor was like, does she, do they talk a lot? And like, yeah, all the time. And it's like, tell him to shut up, just tell him to shut up, let him talk, And so she's always been somewhat maternal and, like older siblings are, and kind of, guiding and like, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. And so, but we grew up close, bunk beds and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we were kind of forced to play, and she would kind of aggravate me sometimes when I was younger, and as we got older, we have a lot of similarities, and yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not one of the relationships where it's like, "Are you sure you're my sister?" You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, are you sure? It's clear. So.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about being outside and the land. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about growing up near water and what that kind of does for a person, especially since you've lived in other places that are a little more landlocked.
Yeah, like now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We're in Tulsa. I forgot to say that.
But
But yes, we're in Tulsa.
But I found the Arkansas River here, so
Yeah.
I'm okay for the most part. I'm all right. But I mean, the water, as muddy and brown as the Mississippi River is, which was about maybe a mile away from where, well, both places. Now that I'm thinking about it, when we lived uptown, um, we were on Camberton Street. It was about maybe, I don't even think it was a mile away. The levee wasn't even a mile away, and then on the West Bank, it was about a mile away. So water has always really been there through fishing, but also just kind of like a place of peace. I can remember me and my friends kind of taking our bikes and saying, "Okay, let's go to let's go to the corner store, let's go to the candy lady, let's go to the snowball stand, and then let's go to the levee, and we're just gonna sit out. We're gonna pig out, is what we used to call it. Pig out, we're gonna have all these chips and snacks and everything, and we're gonna get up there and just eat and just look at the ugly water, really, but the ships, the barges, and the ferry and everything. But water has always been, like I think for most people, very peaceful and. Yeah, so that's water for me. So wherever I am, when I don't have water, nearby, I get kind of. But luckily, when I stayed in Stillwater, I stayed across from one of the lakes, and so I was able to just walk across the street and say, "Okay, I have my water. I'm okay." Even when, and not just in hard times, but just to be there. Like, okay, I have my water. That's my friend. I'm all right.
Kind of center yourself.
Yeah. But I think about water, especially through Katrina, as both, kind of the friend and the foe, right? Because it can do so much positive things, so many positive things, but it can do a lot of negative things as well. We talk about flooding, and we talk about just everything that happened with it, not just Katrina, but other hurricanes that we've seen, or other instances of flooding. Things of that sort. So it's a weird type of relationship I have, and I'm not a big swimmer, right? Though I've done sports like rowing team, crew teams, and stuff like that require, you would think a person would be comfortable, but I'm not a big swimmer. Like I can swim to kind of save half my life.
Yeah.
But I'm not. But for some reason, I've never been afraid of water in that way, even though I'm not the best swimmer. I've never been too hesitant to get close to it.
Yeah, so you mentioned Hurricane Katrina, so you were living in New Orleans at that time?
Yeah, that was the beginning of my senior year.
Okay.
And so, it's a lot, and still to this day, we kind of talk about it, and we didn't really leave for hurricanes. Most, most locals, we weren't leaving. We were like, okay, it's just a fluke, and we know what's going to happen. We'll go to a shelter at most and be fine. But that was different. I think we all felt it in the air. But we didn't leave until my grandmother, who at the time stayed by herself. My mom stays in now, but until my grandmother said, "I don't feel right. I think we should go." And we really don't have any family outside of New Orleans. That aside from maybe my uncle who stays in Oregon, like who's gonna drive up? So who's gonna travel to Oregon? Yeah. So, but my sister was in college, and she just had my nephew, and they were staying in Natchitoches, which is where I went to college and finished my high school education as well. But so we ended up driving up there, and but yeah, it was we lost. Because my grandmother stayed on the east, and that part was part of the city that flooded. And so she lost a lot, and my mother stayed on the West Bank, and my dad did as well. They were separated by that time, but my mom had really bad wind damage where it tore her roof off, and so the water was able to get in. So we lost a lot there, but you know, when I think about it, I'm like, well, it could have been a lot worse though. You know, we didn't lose our lives. We were all together. We didn't have to, worry about that because, you know, I know so many people who, who did, say, well, I couldn't find. I don't know anyone who lost, someone through this story, but I do know people who firsthand say, yeah, I couldn't find this person. I didn't know who my mom's was. I didn't know what was going on. A pretty good friend of mine, who's actually a football player. He actually plays for OSU now.
Oh, yeah?
And, yeah, he's one of the receivers. He was young. I think he was probably like 8 or 9 at the time. He almost, lost his leg because he had a cut, and he's, think about that. He almost lost his leg, but now he's one of the, he left Louisiana as one of the best receivers in the nation, right? And so thinking about how different his life would have been, because he was actually in the water. He was swimming, he was actually in the water. So, it could, we kind of look at it as, well, it could have been a lot worse. So many people suffered a lot more. And not to say that it wasn't bad, but just to kind of look at the glass half full, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned your grandmother. Is this grandmother on your mom's side?
Maternal grandmother, yeah.
Oh, okay. What's she like? What was her name?
She's a firecracker.
Yeah?
Yeah, she's opposite of my mom, actually. Yeah, she's a firecracker. But she's also tender. And it's funny because both sides can really cook. My grandmother is a great cook as well. None of us can really pin down her potato salad. I've been trying.
Oh,
and I can't.
She's not going to tell.
No, the thing
Does
about
she
it is,
tell?
and I do the same thing. Like, we'll give our recipes. Like, she'll give me the recipe, but it's the hands. It's just, and it's the method and knowing timing. Cooking it is sort of, I think it's a sort of science, and then there's some kind of spectacular thing to have some type of magic. You just have to know, the special words to open that right door. But yeah, she's feisty and loving, and we grew up. Me and my sister, we grew up going over to her house and my grandfather's house when we were younger. Weekends, and so my parents would say, "Well, we have to get," they said they had to get bills and stuff together. I really think that they were going out partying. I really think that they were like, going and get all the food that they didn't want to share with us, some boiled crabs and crawfish. And then they would say, we got to do bills and work on house stuff. When really, I believe that they were just like shipping us there because, our grandparents didn't want to see us. And, and so they were like, yeah, y'all go over there, we got to get stuff together. But I think that was like there, which I haven't even asked. I'm going to ask them. And my mom would probably be like, no, baby, like, okay, yeah.
So on your dad's side, did his parents live near you, or?
When we lived uptown, we lived a block away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we lived a block away, and my dad was always very close to his mom, to my grandmother. And, yeah, but they both passed fairly young. My dad was 29, so I was 5 when they passed, and they passed within 6 months of each other. My grandfather, and then there's the whole thing around heartbreak, right? Like passing. So, but they stayed close. I don't remember much, of course. I wasn't super close to my grandmother, but to my grandfather, I was. I remember him. I don't remember what his voice sounds like, but he would pick me up from school when I was young. He would come. I went to a Montessori school in New Orleans when I was really young, into the 3rd grade when we moved to the West Bank. But his thing was to come and get me. Like, so he would ride the streetcar and wait outside the gate with his newspaper and his shirt that looks like he had it for like, his t-shirt that looks like 15 years old. It was like this thin, like toilet paper thin. And he would stand out there and, kind of wait on me. Real quiet, man. My mom said he talked. I don't really remember what his voice sounds like, but she says he says some stuff. I guess I was in La La Land or something.
Yeah, you're little. Too. So what do you remember about Montessori school?
I remember doing what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember really exploring, discovering, and kind of having my own way, which I think is good to a certain extent. Like thinking about it now, kind of like I could have used some more structure. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like I could have used some more structure. And maybe had I finished, had I gone through, maybe that would have come. But I just remember whenever I switched or when we moved, I remember like having a hard time. And I could do the work, but it was like, I really just want to play video games. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I really just want to do this other stuff. I want to draw. Like you're doing this, I really feel like drawing. And so, yeah, but great teachers, and I just wish I would have like tried to learn. You know, we had a French program. I wish I would have like gotten into that and stuff, but that didn't happen. So.
So you mentioned that you like to draw. We know that you're a writer as well. So was there a particular teacher or teachers or any kind of memory you have with your early schooling that you recall really having those talents encouraged?
Yeah, drawing. I kind of got in trouble for drawing because I wasn't really doing work in class. I was just drawing pictures, and I should have been in some drawing program, which I never got into until college. I should have taken some type of classes, but I don't know what was going on with me. But I just know, you know, I got in more trouble. But you know, but when something big came up, like we would design the classroom doors for like Christmas or something, had these contests at schools. You know, that was when, you know, it's like, okay, well, I'm useful.
Then you're allowed.
yeah, I'm useful. In terms of writing, definitely teacher, Miss Arette, who was my 10th grade English teacher. She was, I think she was the first person who gave me some type of confidence, not in just writing, but just in poetry, really. Because I know she asked us, we were going over, I don't even remember what we were going over. I don't know what poet, that tells you how much I was paying attention in class. But I do remember her saying poetry, we're going to do this. I remember some examples. And then I had a crush on this girl, and I said, all right, this is my chance. I'm going to write a poem. And, you know, and it was something really corny, like my special treasure. And it had like all these like beach island, underwater, X marks the spot type stuff. I thought it was really bad. And then, but it wasn't until I got to class. And we turned it in, and we got to class, and the instructor was like, okay, yeah. And she was surprised mainly because I didn't participate that much. I was just kind of like in the back, like saying like little smart stuff. And, you know, I wasn't loud, but I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing. And she, well, you know what? I said 10th grade. She was my 9th grade, I believe. So I guess it was my 10th. But she, she called me out. She said, I just want to say I was just so surprised. I read, you know, Clemonce's poem, and she was like, she always loved to say my name or something. She was one of the only teachers that would say it right. Clemonce, and she would just say it. And she was like, yeah, and I read it and it was great. Do you mind reading it for the class? And the girl, you used to think, wow, the girl was in that class, and she didn't like me for nothing. Like she did not like me. I ended up dating her friend later, right? But that's another story. So, but yeah, I was like, okay, I'm gonna say this poem, and get the girl, and I said it. And I think she knew, even though I didn't have her name, I think she knew, and she just kind of put her head on the desk. And then after she liked it so much, she asked me to say it again. So she like I was on repeat, and then the girl was like, "Oh," she was like, "Oh my goodness!" And so, but she gave me confidence because she enjoyed it so much. And I think I might have put it on my wall for a while. And I don't know where it is now. My mom, I don't think we lost in the storm. I just think my mom, she throws away everything. Like she's, you know, she's. But to you know, which I'm okay with now. You know what I'm saying? Like she doesn't hold on to a lot. She doesn't hold, and I think it. You know, I understand it. You know, with some of the things I was like, I had all my Hot Wheels cars. You know, I need my cars, and she like one day they just disappear. You know, and I always wonder like, what happened to this stuff? You know, like where is what's that song? What is it? John Mayer? He's talking about it. Whatever happened to his lunchbox or something. You know, it's like it's that. It's like where's my stuff? You know, and it's always my mom. And my mom would act like she didn't do it. She was just like, or she would just be like, just nonchalant. Oh, maybe I threw that away. You know, like what are you doing? What are you doing? So, yeah.
So did you keep a journal or do things like that when you were writing something like with your poetry?
You know, I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember reading much. My mom really had to force me to read when I was especially young. when I was in elementary, I loved comic book. I loved Sonic the Hedgehog, and so I would say, "Oh, Mom, buy me the Sonic the Hedgehog," and we would go to what was before Rite Aid was Rite Aid, at least in New Orleans, K&B. We would go there, drugstore, and they always had the new Sonic comics. And she would get them because she expected me to read. She was like, "I know you like the pictures, so you like to draw, but read." And I would never read them. I would just look at the pictures and I would figure out what was going on. So I didn't do much reading, and writing wise, I don't remember writing much. But my friend Irene, who I ran track with in high school, and who I'm still friends with today, she said that I used to write a lot. She said, "You used to write all day." She was like, "You used to write poetry. Some of it was like erotic, which is, I used to, for me, it was like, it must have been really bad then, because I don't remember doing much."
You blocked it out.
What'd she say?
You blocked it out.
I guess, I don't know. But she said that I would write stuff, and she said sometimes she would read it and it would be good, and then I would just throw it away. I would just, maybe that's my mom coming out, right? Like, what is this? Okay, get that. But yeah, but I don't remember it, but I remember after, like getting into college and getting into like the open mics and stuff, and there wasn't much to do. And Natchitoches, Louisiana is actually the first settlement. It was settled 4 years before New Orleans, according to, some people disagree, but that's according to the books. That's what it says. And so very small town, kind of like Stillwater, a little bit, not as big of a university, a retirement town, beautiful, very enchanting place, definitely. But there wasn't much to do, so go to bars, go to this place, open mics, karaoke, So I think that's when I really started to get into it. I was like, okay.
You get more serious about it. So you studied graphic communications, is that right?
Yeah, which is just design, graphic design. Yeah, that was well, I did that because I wasn't really kind of leaving out of high school. I didn't have any type of plans. I was just kind of like going with the motions, and I was like, we all go to college afterwards, I didn't. But I knew I liked. I did have an interest in architecture, but I was already in Natchitoches, and I've been accepted to Northwestern. They didn't have an architecture program. The architecture program was at I believe University of Lafayette had one. But my sister was driving in my head, get as far away from home as possible. And since Natchitoches was 4 hours away from New Orleans, and Lafayette is 2 hours away, it was kind of like, okay, I'm not going to go to Lafayette. And so I just kind of stayed and, I did graphic design. And it was cool, but I enjoyed more of the more fine arts. I enjoyed more sculpture and painting and drawing. Lithography, and I enjoyed that more than the using the kind of sitting on a Mac and clicking. That was cool, but only to a certain extent.
Yeah. Tell me about the open mic nights that you mentioned. What happened there?
Fun times. Actually, an old friend of mine, he was the one putting it on. There's a place called Ron's House, which was like a knockoff Run's House, right? And that's where everyone, who we were kind of close to, especially in terms of Black students, that's where we went. That's where we went to for our Friday nights. And so, it happened every Friday. And so I think I worked my entire time in undergrad. I think at the time, I first started working at Chili's, but I would be in the kitchen, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna clean this stuff up and hurry up and get out of here, and I'll rush home. Shower and go, and it was just a community of poets. Some who they had like a group on campus before, but then it didn't make it, and they were just out, and most people would say the same poems every week. But it was a time of challenge for me, so I tried to write at least one new poem a week, and I wanted to perform it, and I would try to memorize it, but it wasn't that good in the beginning. But it was just like a challenge. It wasn't like I want to be better than everybody up here, but it was like, let me see if I could do something new every week. And so I think that, kind of self-push, got me a little bit closer, or not knowing that I wanted to do poetry at the time, but I think it was definitely a place of building.
Yeah. And didn't you start the Brainiacs Poetry Society?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, we shortened it to BAPS, but then, we had to think about the movie with Halle Berry. And we were like, God, dog, how did we name this? How did we do this? We could have picked another letter. But maybe, I guess P, maybe we put R right there, but I don't know what R would stand for. But anyway, yeah, we started that. Me and a friend of mine, Brandy White, who's the co-founder, started in 2010. And it was a group of performance poets. And we put on about 3 shows a semester, and we would have certain themes, and so it wasn't exactly slam, right? We didn't have a competition. We would call them slams before we really understood the term, but we would just kind of have these big shows and mostly educational programming and things. So people would come out. I mean, people from the community, faculty, staff, of course, students. And they were a thing. And we just had a whole bunch of fun. We would just, we got together. We were a family. We would, get together at my place. I would cook, and people would come over. And even Saturday mornings, we would have meetings. And we'd be like, all right, y'all, let's get breakfast and let's do this and do that. And so it was just a family thing, really. We would do a whole bunch of group pieces and fun times. Some of the best times ever. But even that, since we had so many people, wasn't just, it wasn't so internal. And so we were able to, we gave each other feedback, and we kind of just moved through it. And then people cried, and people laughed, and it was just a good time, a hard time. Yeah. A lot of work, a lot of late nights, but worth it.
So when did you start thinking of yourself as a writer or as a poet? Both.
For a lot of people, and I think for me too, it's hard to come to the terms with the with the title of a lot of things, with poet especially, and of course like the term poet a lot of times gets a bad rap because it's seen as this kind of high art, and but at the time I wasn't looking at it like that. I just didn't feel all the way worthy. But I think probably sometime when I was in. Whenever we had the poetry group going, we had BAPS going, maybe late or afterwards. I moved to Baton Rouge. My mom was staying in Baton Rouge, so she was. I was the last one to leave Natchitoches, of course. I had to finish school, but she left a few years before. But she never went. She didn't go back to New Orleans. She just stayed in Baton Rouge, which is an hour away, and moved there. I think probably I don't know. I would say basketball. I would say around that time because there was a slam team. Eclectic Truth, stationed in Baton Rouge, wonderful slam team. Zero, Donnie, Desiree, just some talented people. So many more people, right? But so talented. But it was competitive, right? They did slams, so they were like fierce, but I enjoyed it. I was like, I'm gonna try to do this. I was never that good. I was never that competitive, and I was doing the same thing in terms of I wanted to try to do something different every week. And I just, have people that, saying poems for like 5 years, and they're just good poems. Even, they're just great performers, great writers. And so I don't think I think the closest I got was like second place, And then they were trying to take that away from me. They were like, we don't know if you really got second. You might have had third, And so, but I think around that time, because at that time I said, I want to, performance is cool, but I want to learn how to get this on the page. I want to learn how to make this stand. And the woman I was dating at the time, she's really the one who told me, kind of pushed me into grad school, and to really think of myself as, to really take on the title of poet. Because she said, you need to go to grad school. I don't know anyone who writes this much, because I would write 3, 4, 5 poems some days, right? And she would just be like, no one writes, I don't know anyone who writes like this. Go to grad school. And she was at LSU at the time, and she was like, go. And so I think, maybe sometime in Baton Rouge, it was, I was like, okay, maybe this is what I should be doing, Not having a background in creative writing or really studying the classics or anything, but I was like, okay, well, maybe I can learn that later, which I'm still, I constantly feel like I'm playing catch up, which is like a blessing in a way, but also, you're behind. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So that's how you ended up in Stillwater, right, for grad school?
Yeah. That's how I ended up in Stillwater.
Tell me about adjusting to life in Oklahoma.
All right. Well,
Maybe you still are. Yeah.
we know the water, but luckily I was
Right.
across the street from the lake. But
Mm-hmm.
we know the water thing. It was. I think I had a little culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had some culture shock when I first got up here. I remember first getting to Stillwater. I remember being in Walmart and I was walking, and this was like the first black guy I seen in Stillwater. I was just like, I was getting stuff in the apartments. And I walk in, and I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna say what's up, whatever. And I was like, hey man, how you doing? And he just kept going.
Really? Oh, no.
Yeah, and so that was like one of my first impressions of Stillwater, and also. At the same time, matter of fact, maybe the trip before that, because me and the woman I was talking to at the time, we had come to scout out the area. We were like, okay, let's look for an apartment or whatever. And so we were driving around, and we turned down the street that's probably about a block or two away from where my apartment was in Stillwater. And turned down, I think we're going to turn back around. And so we pulled into this driveway, and we look straight, and we see, what do we see? We see a Confederate flag painted on the back wall of the garage, and it's like, oh, so that was my introduction, was like, welcome, And so I was like, all right, put it in reverse, and we got out of there as fast as possible. But, that spoke volumes, and so with that, and, some of the interactions I had of people not really speaking, not being warm, according to what I thought was warm, it was like, yeah, it was rough. It was rough for a while, but luckily the first few weeks I found, I'll say meeting Lisa Lewis, right? Meeting Lisa was great because I got a chance to meet up with her before school started, and she was warm from the get-go. She was warm, and she talked about my work, and I was like, okay, well, I saw this and that potential, and so she was very affirming from the get-go, and my poetry was, whew, what we would call hit. It was bad. At least I thought, But she saw potential, and so she was. That was good. And then I made a few friends through. I met a friend. Well, I met Christina and friend Chris. I don't want to be saying people's names, but I guess it'll be okay. It's like, well, he's not saying anything bad. One of my friends I met in a dance class, a salsa class, and and then I just it was like. I would meet one person, then they would know other people, and they would all be cool. And then I met a few people in the department who I was able to get close to, and I was like, okay, well, these would be my people. And it just kind of stayed that way. I didn't branch out. I tried, though. I did try. My first semester, I did try, because I was like, I need some more black people. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go to, I want to go to the Black grad meeting, and I got in there. I think I left early. I left another meeting early just to go to this meeting, and I got in there. I just wasn't feeling it, so I said, you know what? I said, I'm gonna just go back. I'm not even gonna worry about it. But it was tough. It was tough for a while. It was tough, but luckily I did have a support team with a few people I did meet, and they were supportive from the get go, and so they were really my saving grace. Yeah.
So I before we met today for our interview, I asked if there was a poem that you'd like to share. So we're talking about Stillwater.
Sure.
And there's a poem that you've written called Neighbors. That's forthcoming in the Connecticut River Review. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Do you mind reading it?
Yeah, this is the story I was telling. So that's cool. Yeah. Okay. All right. Neighbors. How long did it take to paint the flag on the garage's back wall is not what I asked myself or my living lover, backing out of the driveway, heading back to where we'd just turned, looking for a place to stay. We were greeted by a lawn of trucks and cars, Hot Wheels that had grown and grayed, and the Confederate mural for us to marvel. It couldn't have been that difficult, seeing as the design is rather simple. An diademed X of 13 stars, an intersection of dreams, and the red that surrounds it. The red texts, the red trucks, the red necks, the red rust, pointing to the odd of it all. A single man could have pulled it off, could have brushed, or rather slathered paint from canister to wall. But 2 stories means family. So I picture a wife drafting the Southern Cross, and kids filling in the stars. Say, can you see? A garage, open garage aerating the latex exhaust. Neighbors walking their children, pointing past the ropes, shovels, ladders, and saws. Racism takes teamwork, takes the anointment of offsprings. I can almost see the gawking once the wall was finished. The man kissing his wife's temple, both with one arm around each other and the other around their kids. That day, my lover and I agreed the South and Midwest were no places for blacks to settle. I guess the image could have existed in the house before they got to town. A backdrop whistling, welcome niggas, they'd failed to take down.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
There's a line, racism takes teamwork, takes the anointment of offspring. That it's just such a searing line, has this resonance, such unfortunate truth. How can we use this truth to help facilitate conversations about race?
That's a good question. Well, just thinking around, which I think a lot of my writing revolves around inheritance and thinking about not just the tangible, but the intangible, right? So the ideals that we inherit. And so I think that type of idea of knowing that, well, this is not so much of just nature, right?
Yeah.
But that it is nurture. And I think it can allow us to have more of a sensitivity to maybe to someone who's saying like, this is how I was raised, but I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? This is not how I want to be, but I'm still saying some pretty messed up stuff, because it's just in me. So I think, that's one way of maybe broaching the conversation. But a lot of things, right? A lot of what we believe takes, many people kind of saying, this is what it is, this is what it is, this is what it is. It doesn't, sometimes it starts with us, but sometimes it's just like, this is just learned, right? It's just learned. It was given to me, it was spoon-fed, really. So,
And you've led community discussions about race, so I'm thinking of your involvement with OSU's Office of Multicultural Affairs, a discussion panel in the light bulb room, is diversity enough? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Maybe that Ralph Ellison reference as well.
Yeah, is diversity enough? Which I think we, OSU has won, year after year, so many diversity awards, and meaning that we have this melange of different races and ethnicities and everything else. But I think, and I think many other people think that inclusion is really what you want. If you're gonna if you want to be awarded for something, if you want something to be impactful, it's inclusion, because that's what makes us feel like we belong, right? So kind of go back to when I first got to Oklahoma and trying to find that space of like belonging and finding it. Inclusion is one of the most important things to people if we think about what do we do everything for anyway? It's for relationship mainly, right? Most people are like focused on relationships. So inclusion being, acceptance, and also being a way of saying like I care to the point where I will do the hard work. Like I care to the point where I want to understand and I want to be sensitive, and then hoping that those who hear and who can actually assist, hopefully that they're willing and they're welcoming in that way. But that doesn't always happen, and you can't really it's no way to say that I expect because I feel this way, like to feel that type of privilege. Like because I do want to, I want to do good, people should help me. It doesn't always work that way. And just that's something that, I think we have to understand. I mean, not everyone's going to say, I'm going to pull you up. I have just kind of getting back to my friend Chris, he was talking about this speaker that had come to his school when he was younger, and he did this, this display, this physical display of helping others up or helping people up or being helped up, and so he stood on top of a table and said, okay, I want y'all the students, I want y'all to try to pull me down the table, and they tried, and it was easy, right? And then he said it's really easy to pull someone down. And he said, okay. And then they got on top of the table. He said, now I want y'all to try to pull me up. And it was a lot harder. It was a lot harder, And so kind of thinking about, thinking about too that, his whole thing was we can't pull up anyone who doesn't really want to be pulled up. And so it's not about pulling someone up, but it's about assisting them and getting themselves up, but even with that intention, it doesn't always mean you'll have that type of assistance. So understanding that and not being bitter if someone doesn't, if this person doesn't say they want to help, and knowing that, well, you just have to find a different avenue, and the privilege won't always be helped in that way. So
this is kind of related, but it's more about your work with your MFA.
Sure.
So as you were going through your classes, and I'm sure you have to read certain things. How did you feel about, and maybe not just Lisa, but I know you had other teachers such as Janine,
sure.
Joseph. How did you feel about the reading list that they gave you, and maybe not in terms of difficulty, but just their diversity? And so I know with Janine, that's important to her.
I'm glad you asked that question. I was thinking about this the other day. I believe it was I want to say it was my first semester, and so it was my cohort was me, Kalila, Shanley, Christine. I think it was us four as terms of MFA students. And the first semester, of course, in this class, I don't say of course, but in this class, I was the only Black person, period, right? And so I'm in there, the only person of color, actually. And so I was in the classroom, and we had the reading list. Now, mind you, I have not, at this time, I'm just self-taught, right? So I'm just kind of reading what I can, and I'm very obsessive. So I'm more of a person who I'll find someone and I'll just kind of stay on them, and as opposed to being a person who says, I'm going to go out and just do a little bit of everything, like kind of taste test. And so given this list, and so I don't know many of the people on the list, but it was a list of white, female writers. That's it. That was it. And it was my first semester, and so I was like, and so a lot of the poetry was, I won't say who the poets were. I might say who I had, because we had to do like a project and everything. And I'll say I had Jan Beatty, and I had Red Sugar, her first and her inaugural book, which I very much enjoyed. But I won't say who the other writers were. I'll just say that there was a lot of travel poetry. And so there was a lot of privilege, a lot of writing down privilege. And it was really hard to connect. It was really hard to connect. And I was just like, I was trying to find my way, and I was like, And some of the writing was good, but even then I'm still trying to understand writing on the page, because it is, it can be different. I won't say it is different, but I think that for a writer who says, I want my writing to live on the page, and then for a writer who says, I don't really care about the page, I want it to be on the stage, and then, I guess, there's a middle ground, or, I won't try to separate them like that. Poetry is poetry, but I didn't really get it. I didn't get some of the stuff, even with some of the good stuff, where people were like, oh, this line is so good. I was like, what? Because I was used to more of slam, which is closer to hip hop, right? So I was like, that's still nothing for me. But the funny thing is that after when we got to the end or whatever, Lisa was like, she did say, well, I'm glad we tried this out, but I don't think I'll ever do this again.
Yeah.
And she also said, because she'd gone and on a lot of the writers because they were talking about, she hadn't read all of the books, which I really enjoyed that she was willing to say, these are books I haven't read. I'm just going to, we're diving together. And so her uncertainty, it showed just a confidence. And I do believe she's a master teacher. Like she does like these Jedi mind tricks where you don't realize that she's like kind of gently guiding you because she's so good. But she did say, never do this again. Like I don't, like this wasn't the best idea, which was also, I mean, she already had respect, like a huge amount of respect. And when she did that, I said, okay. But that was hard, that was hard. Janine, how many classes did I take? I think I only took one workshop with Janine. And Janine is, Lisa's a friend, and Janine is also a friend. And matter of fact, I just saw Janine today at a barbecue. So, so that class was, I don't remember everyone that we read, but I know we read some really good poems. And I don't want to just name, I guess I could name one person, but I just, I kind of want to include all the good people. But yeah, I mean, it was very diverse. It was a diverse selection. And there were times, and there were many times, but I think there was an occasion where, there was like a Black question. And everyone kind of looked at me, and I was like, I don't know what y'all looking at me for. But, but she was very, Janine was very sensitive to that, you're right? Like, she was like, look, I understand. Like, I understand. And just want to make sure you're okay and you don't feel pressured. So she was very comforting, in that way, and very, she was just on. Like I think Lisa had more of a hands-off, cool approach where she would let you kind of figure your way, and Janine was more prescriptive in a way. So they balanced each other out in that way. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. I was curious about that because the reading lists that you study are important because they reflect certain things. If you can't relate or connect, or maybe you're writing subject matter that others aren't, or maybe your peers in the workshop have no idea why a certain line or image might be really important to you, and they just don't,
Yeah, that was hard the first semester.
Everyone's mind has to be open, not just...
Yeah, but I think we were closed on both ends though. Like I think my mind was kind of closed. I didn't understand, and I think like my work wasn't being really understood as well to a certain extent because I was coming from more of a hip hop background and double entendres and which almost came off as like riddles, which some people would say that's bad. You don't want a poem to be a riddle, and so there was a type of give and take that had to happen, and I think it did. I think we all really just grew together, and continue to grow together. So.
Yeah. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about your writing process. So take me through writing a poem. And I know every poem can be different, but take me from that first impulse, sensation, mood, and how you kind of work your way through to a finished piece.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say many of my favorite poems are written just on impulse, and I don't care how messy it is. I'm just trying to get it. Whenever I have a line, I have an image, I have whatever, I'm just trying to just get it down as fast as possible, and I'm trying not to think. I'm trying to work based on instinct, and I want it to be like dance, and because I know if it's like dance, and it'll be musical, it'll have sound, and have those sonic qualities that I really enjoy. And so I really just starting off, just let it go, and then I'll go back. I told someone the other day, I was like, then I beautify it, which is not all the way true. What I'll do is I'll kind of go back and I'll see what is the poem really trying to. What does a poem want to be? Those are my favorite poems, but there are other poems when they're more conceptual, so they're more thought out, and they don't always have that kind of stream, that the other poems have, that type of dancing. But I'm always focused on music, the way the music sounds, and kind of, the poem kind of makes me move my shoulders.
Yeah.
Then it's, then then there's something that's catching me. There's something that has my attention, and then I have to look for other things and see. So,
what do you think reading poetry publicly does for the person who's reading it, for the audience, just being in the presence of sound?
Well, I think for me at least, and I think a lot of people, I asked my mom not too long ago, I said, did y'all used to read us bedtime stories? And because I love stories, like if you, there's one of the fellows here, who's a good friend, who's also from Louisiana, he's from Lake Charles, he'll tell these stories, and some of them are really good, and some of them just end flat. So I've told him, like, look, man, if you have me on a story, if it's not interesting, just lie. You know what I'm saying? Just get to the end, just tell a good lie, and you could tell me it was a lie later on. At the moment, if you have me, just keep going. But I asked my mom, I said, did y'all used to read his bedtime stories? And she was like, no, indeed. She was like, no, we put y'all in bed. And I was like, y'all are terrible parents. I was like, y'all are terrible. And so just thinking of that, I love stories. I love stories, and I think most people do. I think most people enjoy narrative, and they want to feel like they're being transported somewhere, right? Like somewhere that they haven't been, or somewhere that they feel like they have been in some way. They do want to relate to, and so reading a lot, I think for the poet, or I think for just the reader, it is an act of bravery. It does take courage, I think, to get up there. And read that, but I also think it can be a confidence booster. It can be affirming depending on the feedback. Let's say throw something at you, then it's not. But we have hecklers. I think for me, it definitely gave me a sort of a higher self-esteem, of knowing that because most of my life I didn't feel like my words matter, right? Like I said, a sister who spoke for me for a long time, and I had a dad who was pretty loud, and I won't say pretty loud, who's still loud, but he's calmed down. He's definitely chilled out a little bit, but I mean, it gave me a voice, and I think it can give many people a voice, and it transfers. That's the cool thing about many things, but. If I think about that type of reading or performance, or it transfers. It can transfer, to how you are on the job, to how you are just public speaking, period, or just relationally. It can transfer. So, and like I said, for the audience, it's just it's a place of. It can be a place of comfort for me, or discomfort too, which is always which I'm also for. Making someone feel uncomfortable, which not forever, but I think a little discomfort being in there, I think it can change some things. It can make you consider things maybe that a person didn't consider for a while, or have never considered. So,
you think your work's changed over time? You kind of look at at your body of work just thus far. What do you think it represents?
I think I was trying to get rid of a whole bunch of compositions that I had. I'm sure I had over 20 compositions before I came here, and I thought I got rid of it. My mom said, "No, I think I have those in my storage." And I was like, "I told you, burn those." But I think before it was all about sound more than sense. It was just like, sounds good. Those rhymes, those rhymes are going. And so I think, through really that's with the workshops at OSU, right? I had people to tell me this, like every workshop I would have something that said, great sounds, but this right here, it was like, but you can do, you can work on this a little bit, and this needs to be, and so I think in terms of feeling and clarity, big time. So like the work that I have now, the work that I'm compiling my manuscript now, and I'm thinking about the work there and thinking, this is work from just the last 2 years. And if I think about it, like I've been writing poetry constantly for about 10 years now,
Yeah.
almost 10 years now. And I'm like, that's a long time. And then just to say that only the last 2 years is what's fitting in, but my work has changed. That I think has changed in a way of what I see now is like I'm really for, and not to say I wasn't for that before. It's like kind of someone asking you, like if someone asked me right now, have you ever been in love? And I would say, I could say, oh, just with the last person, or I could say, well, I think I was in love because love was defined differently in every. So I could say, well, I said I was in love with the person at that time. So yeah, I was in love almost every relationship, right? And so I think that's kind of it. It's like, well, I don't think that work is bad, And I think I was in love with it at a certain time, But I think now is me for now, Maybe a few years from now, I'll be like, what the heck was I talking about? That happens. But I think that's cool. You get to see, a sort of transformation, which I'm a fan of transformation.
Yeah.
So.
And you can create here in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. It's funny, just thinking about, I guess that was one of my questions that Lisa asked during the defense was about geography and what type of role that it plays in my work in terms of New Orleans and living on the Gulf Coast and water, and then Oklahoma being, landlocked and a pretty dry place,
right.
and windy and just different landscape. And but I'll talk about New Orleans first because thinking around, let's say, Hurricane Katrina or this New Orleans period, it took me a long time to start writing about New Orleans, and part of it was some, not all, but some of the slam poets who I would see, they would kind of jump on the opportunity for like whatever the current event was or whatever was like the hot topic, and it felt opportunistic, which maybe we're all opportunists in a different way, but it was just, I think certain times I just felt like it was whatever it was being used and was kind of being paraded around in a way that that wasn't reverent. It wasn't as reverent as it should have been, and yeah, and not trying to get like religious or anything, definitely not. But I do believe, because I believe sacredness is separate from that. You don't just find that in religion, and I just felt like people, some poets weren't treating it with the type of the type of attention and and intimacy, wasn't giving it that type of intimacy that it needed. So it took a while for me to write about New Orleans, and then when I got to Oklahoma, I don't remember writing about Oklahoma until but maybe for like the last 2 years, really. I don't remember writing much about Oklahoma because I was still trying to figure out like, how do I, what I'm saying, like what am I going to write about this place and how do it? And I've written so much more now that I moved to Tulsa. But Tulsa, if you think about it, I was talking to a friend the other day, we were talking about the difference between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, aside from like the geography and everything. But thinking about, okay, well, we have this bombing, right? We have the Oklahoma City bombing, and then we have the Tulsa massacre, right? The race massacre, and just thinking about how different those things are, and because of that, just how different these two cities are. So there's a different feeling here. There's a different feeling in Tulsa, and it can be unsettling. It can be very unsettling, and it can kind of haunt. If you're not careful, you can feel like a type of haunting feeling, even through through the people. And I think that once you enter a place like this, it's hard not to transform into, because you kind of like, if you move into a town and everyone's friendly and loving, kind of like the Lafayette area, Louisiana, Lafayette, Grand Coteau, charming, the people are just warm. If you make eye contact, someone's gonna speak to you, they're gonna wave something, right? And so, if you kind of get into that community, usually that community will transform you. You'll start to do that, right? Because you're like, this is just what we do here. And so I think almost every place, if interactions feel kind of awkward, or it feels like there's, there's the elephant in the room and no one's really talking about it, but everyone knows, right? The elephant, you can't miss the elephant. It's just, yeah, it's sometimes it's tough to navigate. Really, it's tough to navigate, and it's, I've heard so many people, say, I left Tulsa and I went here. It's a totally different feeling, and it wasn't that far away. You know what I'm saying?
Everyone's Tulsa is different.
Yeah, yeah. So
just through this project, it's definitely everyone has a different Tulsa.
Right, and but I think even with the, the parts that that are dim, I think that there's also, I think that's an even bigger opportunity to look for, like, what's good here. You know what I'm saying? Like what is here that I really want to latch on to? And so I have met a few people, a few fellows, and Tulsa, like, locals who have been, very kind and very warm and loving, and I've been to a few places where I'm like, like across the street, like the Jazz Depot, right? And like, we going down, Tuesday nights, and they have like almost like the open mic, right? Yeah. And some people are really good, and some people you just kind of want to like cut your ears off, you want to bang go it, and but that's like, you got to think about the good parts. I mentioned the Arkansas River,
right?
And someone said the other day, I think it's my friend, was staying in Stillwater, friend Keenan. He said, man, last time I was in Tulsa, man, I went around the Arkansas River and the water was gone. It was like, it was dry, and I was like, it gets like that sometimes, But I was like, but it's still, like, I've been down there when the water's gone, but there's a little, there's a little pool or whatever, and it's around sunset, and it's beautiful. So it's kind of like looking for those things, looking for those possibilities for beauty. That's like, especially in a place like that. I think if you don't, and it's something you're used to, if you're used to a type of warmth and a type of togetherness, and this feeling of openness and truth, and if you don't find a place to, a place of peace, this is like any other. I mean, this is not the only place where, this was a massacre, but there were several riots around the country during the Tulsa massacre, right? So you can't say this is the only place. Like, you can't say this is the only Black Wall Street. The only thing that was named Black Wall Street, right? There were several places in the United States, but I think that this is an interesting history. Yeah.
Sure. So what are you working on now? You mentioned your manuscript. Is this the work you put together for your thesis?
Yeah. Well, I haven't, man, Lisa's probably gonna see this when she's on. She would kill me. I haven't been shopping it around, and that's why she's gonna kill me. She's been telling me shopping around since May. She was like, you need to get this out.
It's only July.
True, but she was like, it's ready. She was like, it's ready to start, and I think she was right. But at the same time, I just, there was like a third of the manuscript. I was like, these are just kind of fillers. I don't really enjoy this, and they were fine, but excuse me. So I've been kind of tinkering with it, and trying to figure out, the feel, the narrative. So yeah, I'm just messing with the manuscript now. Yeah, what I did was for about 2 months. So from like late April, I didn't look at it. Like, once after my defense, I was like, I'm not looking at this manuscript, because I felt like if I was to look at it, then I would be trying to figure it out too soon, and I felt like there was more creating, to do. So I didn't look at it, and I wrote probably wrote a good 25, 30 poems, and about 15 that I swapped out for poems I was like, this is filler. And so it's getting there, it's getting there, I think. I am ready to be done.
Yeah, kind of to that point.
Yeah, because I have other stuff I'm working on, and the other stuff that I just want my mind to be back open, because right now I'm in like revision, revision hell or something. I'm just,
it's a different frame of mind.
Yeah,
creating and
and I'm ready to get back to the practicing. Ready to get back to just just right. So, because a lot of stuff was happening in like 2 months, believe it or not. So I was like, okay, get back to this. Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Any words of advice for writers or anything else that we didn't cover?
Anything else? Let me think. I felt like I had something, but I was gonna forget. I wanted to, I think I just said a thing about the practice, but I don't. What did Sarah Kay say? You familiar with Sarah Kay? She's a poet, and but I came to know her through performance poetry. I actually met her like a few years back. She probably don't remember, but I used to always watch her stuff, and I was like, Sarah Kay, at AWP. I was like, Sarah Kay, and she got turned around like, hey, but she said something about. So I'm saying this so I can kind of set up what I'm gonna give. But she was like, being a mentor is just giving what you have at that moment, and which is a good way to think about it. Not thinking I have to know everything, but thinking I just have to give what I have so far, and that's that's a type of mentorship. But but I'll just say what I said earlier. Just treat everything as like practice. Treat everything. Even think about even the work that's published, right? Which I think you're going to read me something that you said it was not published later, so I'm excited to hear that. I know you're not going to read it now, but I know you're going to read that. But thinking of everything, like the stuff that makes it, the stuff that doesn't make it, all of it is practice for whatever you're going to do. Whatever's going to happen in the future. It's kind of like a football game or a football practice. Like you don't say I'm going to go 70% in practice and then expect to like really be great in the game. You know what I'm saying? You say, well, I'm going to go as hard as I can in practice, and then that's what it's going to look like in the game, right? And so seeing everything as practice, even the games.
Yeah, that's good advice. So I asked you to think of or to bring a poem that you might want to end our time with. So end with bonding time. Is that what?
Yeah, we can end with that. Well,
okay.
I feel like I have more to talk about now. I feel like I want to set this up.
Well, we could.
No, I was going to say.
Talk away.
I was going to say because the manuscript is based on my relationship with my father and his relationship with one of his friends, and it is a book about men, which also means it's a book about women too. So I guess I'll say that, and that this poem is kind of working its way to that and to the type of relationship not just a father and son can have, but the type of awkwardness, which I kind of mentioned earlier, that men can sometimes have, and that can come from maybe some type of insecurity that's within them, that they can't really be fooled. But I'll read Bonding Time. Still messing with the title. I'm gonna read Bonding Time. I guess we'll finish it, right? Okay. I like offshore fishing shows where two men embrace, then brace themselves on the bluffs of their sponsored boats. I like when their poles bend into lowercase f's, and that the fish fighting to unfasten are well over the limit until the camera zooms out. This is what Dad and I watched before leaving the house for chance, prior to squatting the ice chest and bucket we carried through fields of horseflies, spanking our forearms and necks. I like the visors, sunglasses, and cargo vests the men don, and prefer the word like over love when referring to next of kin. Dad always told my sister and me, my mama said she don't need her kids to be her friends. I reckon she didn't like any of them. But I like how the reddened anglers appear empty of anger, how they always release what they catch as if whispering, until next time, bud, or use this grace to populate. Dad keeps all bait fish close to length. Send your paw, he carves to pubescent fins when tossing them back. I like fishing because of the many possibilities for dialogue, for the scent of existence and the buoyancy to not die alone. I like the thought of home being a channel, a river, an ocean. The bull red with its birthmark and the blue claw's bite. The water with its flecked foam and tender sunlight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
So anything else that, I'll just ask it again, that you wanted to add or say, or?
What can I add? Only thing I would add would be for, I guess, like, only poets would care, I guess, that this poem is in terse rima. But,
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say that, the poem is focused around, a kind of closeness, but it's really dealing with, like and love, like a sort of affection and like an automatic type of affection, which is love in terms of family, of saying, I love you. And it's like, for me, it's like, how many times do you have to say that? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we say it, and I think I told Mom this, I was like, well, we say, be careful. Like people say, be careful. And it's kind of like, when you hear that, does that really make you more careful? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was already going to try, or like when someone says it, are you like, all right, I'm I was going to be reckless before. But like the love thing of saying like, okay, well, that's automatic. And so for family, that's there and that's cool, but kind of around the whole thing of, but I want to be liked. You know what I'm saying? Like by my family, like I would, like that's awesome for them to say, well, I like you so much that I'm invested in a different type of way. It's not so much of, your blood, I can't get rid of you, I love you, but more so of like, I like you, I want to be around you. And so dealing with that and dealing, of course, with ancestry and thinking about where that type of thinking comes from of, like I don't need, I don't need my kids to be my friends, right? Like I don't need, I don't need y'all to be my friends. And thinking that, I think that's true in terms of a parent. Whenever you're young, and then a parent, is like, well, I'm the parent, you're the child. Cool. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like that's fine. But I think as we get older, I think we need something different. I think we don't need our parents to be our parents for our entire lives. I think we need our parents to step into, to change, because we're changing. I think we need them to change with us. At least that's for me. I need them, and I think that's something that I found in both of my parents. My mom more though. My mom is more comfortable with just like, but not worrying about, is my child still going to respect me? Like she's like, I have that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like he's showing me that, and he's going to continue to show me that. And if you ever stepped out of line, she's kind of look at me. She's quiet. I told you, she give me that quiet look, and then I'll just be scared again. Right.
She knows how to scare you.
Right. So I don't think she's too worried about it. For my dad, it's like, oh no, Matt, I can take you, so maybe he's like, I don't need, be your friend. You go cross the line, and you go say something slick, but yeah, but that's just working around a different type of affection, in which one, we put so much weight on love, but thinking about, but like sometimes a person just want to be liked, what I'm saying? Like it's just, there's an innocence to it too, though. There's a youth to just saying like, I like you, what I'm saying? Like telling someone, I really like you, it's like, oh, there's a fondness there, and sometimes I think that's all that's needed. Sometimes the love thing is like, that's cool, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes I feel like it's thrown in there. Well, that's all good, but do you really like me? I think it's, I don't know. I think it's sometimes harder to fall out of like than it is to fall out of love. So, but that's all I'll say about it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.